Hey, welcome back to Polyfile. I'm Jeff. Today I want to talk about something that's a little bit different. It's not so much of an analysis of anything or a discussion of a specific kind of idea. It's almost more of just a collection of opinions and observations based around a pattern which has been there forever. This kind of idea that's been floating around in the community at least as long as I've been a part of it, which is I guess 13 years or so now. So this is all about the controversy of hierarchies. So what do I mean by a hierarchy? Well, there's this idea that you often hear within polyamorous circles, which is the idea that, I'm polyamorous, this partner is my primary partner, these partners are my secondary partners. And while my primary comes first, and that's always the way it is, they're just that important to me. And you hear this a lot, but I don't actually think it's polyamory. There's a term for this. It's called open monogamy. You're saying, I have a real relationship, and then I have other. Okay, don't call that polyamory then. You're going to actually hurt people. So what do I mean by how you're going to hurt people? Well, in polyamory, your partners generally, unless you've talked to them about how, no, our interaction only works on a certain level, it's not really going to be a deep connection. It's just sort of something that we like as is, but it stays a bit simpler. Unless you actually state that, you're opening the door to someone actually getting really directly attached to you. Remember, someone who's polyamorous legitimately becomes attached to their actual partners. Just because there's more than one of them doesn't make it fake, doesn't make it not real. They're still going to have real feelings, real connections, and have visions of a real future with you in their lives. So if you're treating them like, well, I thought you realized that I was only doing this as an experiment with my husband or wife, and that it was really up to them to just decide to pull the plug on that whenever one of us felt uncomfortable, and everyone else just has to deal with that. I don't know why you're upset. So you see this happen from time to time, and it's really unsettling, because I don't think it's that people are actually being malicious. I think it's that at some point, someone explained to them that this is what polyamory was. And because they were coming from a naturally monogamous culture, like the mainstream Western culture is, it seemed to make sense, because the idea is, it really just seems like polyamory is just monogamy light. And it's not a kind of relationship, it's a relationship philosophy, it's an entirely different way of looking at things. And I think that people would pick up on these simple terms because it makes it seem approachable. But I think that they miss the point by doing this. It's someone giving a new person an easy path instead of actually helping them understand where they're going. Now, something that I can explain about my own history is when I first started to associate with polyamory and understand the idea, I had the same problem. It was explained to me in these oversimplified terms, and I started to look at things that way too. And I remember explaining that to people around me, and they were taking a much more critical approach to it. They were asking me things like, well, what does that mean for someone to be the primary one? It's like, oh, that means they have veto power. I can't believe that I said that at one point. That's such a terrible thing to say. It boggles the mind. But that's how it worked. And after a while, I started to realize, wait, this doesn't make sense. Why would I order people? How would you think about things that way? How would you put your affection for one person above another? You're supposed to care about these people. You don't compare them. So some people will say things like, well, of course this person's primary. We've been married for 20 years. We've got a bunch of kids. We own real estate together. We're well entangled within each other's families. So obviously they're going to be more important than anything else. Now, I think that this kind of misses the point, though. Yeah, certain kinds of relationships will have certain responsibilities. That will put a certain hold on your time, and it will connect you to things in certain ways. That's not more real or less real. That's just connected to your life in those ways. That's just how that works. So sometimes you'll hear someone say, well, what happens if two of your partners ask you for help at the same time? Well, without having a strict hierarchy, how do you know which one to help? Who do you know who to abandon? And how do they know that that's where they stand in the pecking order? To which I'd say, that's not how to look at it. Consider it a different way. Look at it from, what if it were your people in your family or friends? What if your mother and your sibling contact you the same day, both asking for your help? Well, which one wins? I don't know, it probably doesn't have anything to do with a strict ordering. There's probably some other thought process that goes on. Something like, well, how easily can I help one or the other? How easily could someone else help them in my place if I do something else? How urgent is this? How seriously is the help actually needed, or is it just something they're asking for a little bit of help on something that they could ultimately do themselves? These are the kinds of questions you need to be thinking through and asking. This is how you determine how to deal with this problem in any other aspect of life. Why would relationships be somehow different and have this fixed, static order? After all, to put it one way, imagine you do have a primary and secondary partner. Primary always comes first, and they decided that they really need to sit around and have coffee with you. So you have to, and at the same time, your secondary partner says, well, I really need someone to be here for me right now. You know, one of my parents just died or something like that, and I really don't want to be alone. Well, are you actually going to say to them, well, no, you see, you're second in line here and someone else asked first? Like, that would be insane for you to actually treat someone like that, someone you care about. Most people don't even treat their enemies that bad. And of course, the worst thing that people will do is, oh, me and my spouse are running this as just sort of an experiment. And we decided that, or they decided they weren't comfortable with the relationship that I have with you, so they decided to pull the plug on this, and that was our agreement to begin with, so I don't know why you're upset. This is just something you have to deal with. And they'll act as though that's a reasonable thing to do to someone, and I understand that there's reasons why relationships end because of other logistics and things like that. Sure, that happens. But realize that might not have been real to you, but it sure as hell was real to them. And the bigger question is, why wasn't it real to you? And if it wasn't, why didn't you tell them? Remember, this isn't saying all relationships have to be incredibly serious, deeply connected, long-term things. No, most relationships aren't, and that's fine. But you have to be direct about someone with that. It's not implied that just because you are married, that anyone else you're involved with is going to be somehow lesser. No, that's a terrible way of assuming things would work. No one will assume that. What you have to do is, if you actually do have some limitation about your interaction with someone, whatever reason that is, you should probably just talk to them about it. Make sure that everyone knows. No one's being led on. No one's making weird assumptions. Be direct and be honest. And of course, the one thing to remember in all of these situations is no one relationship has power over another. They don't. They are not in a strict ordering, and they do not collide with each other. Sure, they might be competing holds on your time in the sense that there's physically one of you, but there's lots of those in your life. You can deal with it. This one is not special. It's not different. It doesn't trump all. So don't act like, well, someone else doesn't like what I have with you, and my connection with them is more important, so I'm getting rid of you. No. Treat every relationship as independent, and every relationship as ultimately as important as that relationship is, not what the other relationships say about it. So please, kind of hoping everyone understands this when I say, I want this idea to go away. I want us to stop explaining polyamory to people in these terms, these terrible, terrible terms that allow people to get hurt and people to not realize what they're doing when interacting with others and not communicating what they mean by having a relationship. If you want to be open monogamous, that's fine. Just tell people that. If you want to be polyamorous, be polyamorous. And in that world, we don't rank it. Let me know what you think about this as well, because it is a huge and controversial issue. And it's one that we see all the time. I'll be talking about some other related ideas and other literature which has kind of talked about some of the problems like this within the way it's actually, within the way that the community functions, within the way it's viewed by mainstream media. And I'll be talking about some of those things in a forthcoming video as well. But let me know what your thoughts are on this and if this makes sense to you or not. Anyway, thanks for watching. Talk to you later.